Okay, everyone, this is from Ranker. Vote on everything. What's it like being a kid raised under Scientology? From Kathy Benjamin, dated July 10th, 2024. I always have to get these annoying ads. Sorry, guys. If you know anything about Scientology, you're probably aware that it is pretty out there religion. Founded by the science fiction writer, allegedly, L. Ron Hubbard, but Scientology for kids is even crazier than it is for adults. Scientology's parenting rules are, well, different. Ex-Scientologists have horror stories about Scientology child rearing. It's not even child rearing. Involving stuff like an isolated Scientology's children's camp, where they are put to hard labor and almost never see their parents. Brave New World. Some kids are born into Scientology, while others are brought in as young children. But their lives end up the same. If parents are deeply involved in Scientology, in other words, indoctrinated, their kids will have a very different upbringing than that of other children. This is not even an upbringing. It's complete abuse. Everything from the people they are allowed to see to the subjects they learn in school is restricted or suppressed. They will be interrogated by adults, ask sexual questions, to make sure they aren't doing anything bad, and if they get sick, it is their fault for letting someone evil into their life. Sounds like science fiction, but for a lot of kids with Scientologist parents, this is their childhood reality. When you are born into Scientology, even your birth has to be different than the modern norm called a quiet birth. This to me is insane. Or silent birth. The idea is that a child comes into the world with no trauma that might be caused by hearing its mother screaming in pain. Not that Scientology doesn't traumatize the child, right? It's all about control with, allegedly, LRH. But it isn't just mom who can't make noise while she is laboring away. Other people present, even the hospital staff, can you imagine what the nurses and all that think of these? Are supposed to zip it. This could be a problem if they need to pass information to a nurse or doctor, but what L. Ron Hubbard says goes. Hubbard had some other ideas about birth as well. He liked the abortions too. Go look into it. Hubbard was very much into abortions. He performed some with his wives. Moloch, come to mind. Hubbard had some other ideas about birth as well in preventative Dianetics. He writes that babies should be wrapped somewhat tightly in a warm blanket, very soft, and then left alone for a day or so. I'm going to tell you guys what that is right now. I already know. I attempted to read, what's the word of it? The name. Creating an Illuminati mind-controlled slave. I attempted to read that 3 times. And it was taken off my phone 3 times. This right here is to stop the bond between the mother and the baby. That's the first trauma that the baby is feeling. And then left alone a day or so. Well, that could be viewed as anything from cruel to downright dangerous. Being ignored is something to which children of Scientology need to get accustomed. That's to break the mother-child bond, or the father bond, if there are any. Katie Holmes divorced Tom Cruise when their daughter's son was 6 years old. Former Scientologists said this was probably because 6 is the age when children can start going through a system of interrogation known as sect checking. This stands for security checking, and it is a way of making sure children growing up in Scientology live according to the creeds of the organization. Usually sect checking is only used when a person or child is suspected of breaking a Scientology policy. Imagine 70 years, the Department of Justice or FBI, nobody could find these. Only now with the internet, now apparently people can find it, right? Come on now. Wakey, wakey. Hubbard started the process in 1961, and it still goes on today. It involves an ethics officer asking a child lots of questions to make sure they aren't doing anything wrong. It can also be a way to spy on the kids' parents by getting them to say if they have heard or seen anything happen that goes against Scientology. Hubbard wrote up a list of 100 questions for children from ages 6 to 12 to be asked. Interesting that CNN or NBC or ABC, none of them cover those questions, isn't it? Weird. The list includes inquiries like, have you ever pestered older children or grown people who were trying to work? And do you have a secret? Or have you ever failed to finish your schoolwork on time? Notice they don't mention the sexual questions. Or even, the cannibal questions. Who do you guys think wrote this stuff? Come on. Baby farm questions. Those exist, by the way. With questions like that, it is impossible for a child to come out of an ethics interrogation totally blameless, no matter how good they have been. One ex-member says, you just get conditioned to tell them what they want to hear. There's Leah Remini. Such a cute young lady. When you are a part of Scientology, you are not supposed to get sick. That's also a good way to keep people working, isn't it? I went through that in the military. I think a lot of people that are in the military go through that as well. It's frowned upon if you're sick or you're hurt. Kind of like society. Of course, this is hard for even the healthiest people to control, particularly children. They are walking germ factories. But Hubbard said that if you are a good Scientologist, then you should be healthy all the time. Said from one of the most unhealthy people we know that ever lived or walked the face of the planet. It's one of the many superpowers that following his doctrine is supposed to give you. When a child gets sick, it is because they have become a potential trouble source, or PTS. This means they have interacted in some way with a suppressive person, or SP. SPs are basically any people who don't believe in Scientology. Well, that would cover, what percentage of the world do you think that would cover, you guys? At this point, maybe 90% of people must be suppressive, because not a lot of people believe in it anymore. SPs are basically any people who don't believe in Scientology. After the illness has abated, Scientologists are required to attend a PTS handling session. Don't they do stuff like this in Charlie Igloo Alpha? Weird. Sessions so they can be questioned until they figure out who in their life is the SP. Of course, especially for the most isolated children, this means naming friends or family in Scientology, which can then get that person in trouble. Little Davey's into that. And according to former members, even if you get really sick, you might not be allowed to get medicine for it. Yeah, how many people have died because of that? Don't you guys wonder? It's a question. It's free to ask questions. Former members recall children with higher than 103 Fahrenheit fevers being denied help. Can that cause brain damage, you guys? And if you do get to see a doctor, it will probably be one who practices Scientology. Isn't that comforting? I'm sorry, but in my opinion, Tom Cruise does not look right. He doesn't look right. If you go to a Scientology school, lessons are quite different. from average public or even private schools. In addition to basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, young Scientology students also have to study the works of Hubbard. But even when learning the regular things, there is a Scientology structure that Scientologists believe there are 3 things that can make learning impossible. The misunderstood word, lack of mass, and the skipped gradient. The first involves a lot of dictionary reading and memorization, because the philosophy is that you truly have to understand every word you read, or you won't be able to understand the concept. Don't you wonder where little black-tooth LRH got that goofy idea? Lack of mass is a visceral learning tool that requires literally sculpting things, even really complicated concepts, in clay in order to understand them. Skipped gradient means that you are learning things too quickly, and thus the material is confusing you. The better path is to slowly and methodically comb over every element of learning. Yeah, because heaven forbid you learn too fast. MK Ultra, they don't want you to learn too fast. Unless it's to become an assassin or something like that. And you better hope that you can do all this by yourself from a very young age. Students are just supposed to work alone. Isn't that great? Not a recipe for predator P-files to come in, is it? Supposed to work alone until they understand a subject. This means that some work fast and graduate well before they are 18, while others might need longer. Have a learning disability? Oh, then you're degraded. No, you don't, because Scientology schools don't believe them. They also don't believe in a strong science program, meaning many students with Scientology are greatly lacking in that area. I think a lot of us should advocate for free scholarships for ex-Scientology children or adults. Well, I mean, when they grow up. Somewhat alarmingly, Scientology teachings have been able to penetrate some otherwise normal public schools. Isn't that great? That's infiltration. Some have invited Scientology-backed groups to talk about staying off drugs. Apparently, the cops are all for that. And, some of the cops probably, they just don't know, but they need research. While others have used study tech in the classroom. Some children are raised and educated at a remote location. And there's Leah again. She was so cute. If your parents are important people in Scientology, they might not have time for you. That's a great way to word it, isn't it? They don't give a fuck about us. So a lot of children are rounded up from very young ages and raised at an isolated location known as the ranch. One ex-member said there were about 100 people there, 100 children, and they never saw any non-Scientologists. They just did manual labor and learned at a Scientology school. Word on the curb, too, is that there were various STD outbreaks there. Isn't that great? Herpes, etc. Numerous essays. Children whose parents are in the Sea Org get completely neglected. I just wonder how John Travolta's life would be if he would have believed in more medical treatment. Would his wife still be alive, or his son? The worst thing that can happen to a child is if the parent joins the Sea Organization or Sea Org. Then the children virtually never see their parents, since children are seen to be a distraction, kind of like Brave New World. From the org's important mission, one ex-member said she wasn't even allowed to speak on the phone to her mom without someone else listening in. They do that to everyone, don't they? It'd be great to have a helicopter just drop a whole bunch of burner phones in there. One can dream. And she went 2 years without seeing her. Another ex-member said when she was very young, she got incredibly sick, but her mother was so busy with her Sea Org duties that she only came to see her once briefly while she was ill. There's no excuse. I'm really tired of hearing all the excuses. Seeing your parents just once or twice a week can be common. Don't you guys think this was created on purpose? You know, the people allegedly at the top of the pyramid, you know, demons that they are, love to break up families. You guys see the narratives going on throughout the world right now? Division, breaking up families, hurting children, trying to make children adults. Seeing your parents just once or twice a week can be common. You might also be told to stop calling them mom or dad. Isn't that great, you guys? Isn't that wonderful? And the parents just go along with it? In public, instead, say sir, so that everyone knows how important they are to Scientology. Narcissism. Sea Orgs require a billion-year membership contract. It's probably the only time Tommy hugged his kid, in my opinion. If you hate your life of hard labor, barely any real schooling, and being ignored by your parents, you have the option of joining the Sea Org yourself. Children as young as 14 have joined up. Oh, no, 6, 7. I've heard stories. 8, 9 years old. I've heard, everybody always likes to use the teenage years, you know, the magic teenage years. Although you can become a trainee long before that. There you go, see? Always got a little secret word, don't they? Trainee. Does that get around liability? This is a huge decision because you are signing away your soul for the next billion years. That doesn't sound like black magic, does it? You end up dedicating your whole life to the church. Forced child labor is rampant. Imagine that crazed cop that was chasing Lara. That cop looked like something was wrong with him. Did you see how mad he got and he was like shaking his hands? Tell me that guy hasn't done more heinous things. Imagine so-called men like him standing right next to an organization hurting children. One ex-member, the niece of current leader David Miscavige, said that at the ranch they were put to work starting as young as 7 years old. Yeah, the parents were okay with that too. Parents knew. The parents knew this was happening. They barely got a rest, doing backbreaking work 6 days a week, no matter what the weather. Apparently our government's fine with it too. Apparently several world governments are just hunky-dory with this. They were told they had to in order to pay for them living. For their, oh yeah, they have to pay rent and for their clothes and that as children. Not the parents. The children have to. Pay for them living there. Young kids did things like hauling rocks from freezing streams to build walls. Sometimes they had to pull weeds in the summer sun. They got blistered and bruised, cuts and calluses, but they had to keep going. This is why I really feel like a lot of these kids are buried on these grounds. That's my opinion. They probably have little child skeletons on these lands, and people still won't do anything. Like the, what is that place in Ireland? Tuam, I think it's called, where all the skeletons the child skeletons were unearthed. If anyone complained about work, that would break even the strongest adult. They were punished. Don't you guys wonder why all the mass media pushed Scientology so hard? Even kids that don't live at the ranch have chores to do every day, like sweeping and scrubbing toilets. Oh, they love that. The adults in Scientology would never scrub a toilet. That's what the kids are supposed to do. They might have to do filing or other office tasks, with the threat of hard labor always hanging over their heads if they misbehaved or complained in the slightest. Apparently, Randy didn't know about any of that. This plays into Hubbard's philosophy. He thought that little kids, allegedly, should be treated like adults, since people are getting reincarnated all the time. Theoretically, this isn't the first rodeo, so that 2-year-old actually thousands of years old and should be treated as such. Yeah, he also felt like 7-year-old girls should accept a grown man kissing them passionately on the lips because they remember all of their past sexual history from previous lives. That's not a problem, is it? Do you think that's maybe why poor Reese Cabell had happened to her what happened? And all these young girls? And some of the boys? L. Ron Hubbard came up with a special baby formula after supposedly visiting ancient Rome. Rome of all places. You know, Rome with all the slavery and... While some Scientologists differ on this subject, you guys do know that's where that salute pointing to the sun comes from, right? Yeah, Roman salute. Not a sea salute. Yeah. While some Scientologists differ on the subject, Hubbard didn't think mothers should be breastfed. That's another way to break the bond with the baby and the mother. It's all on purpose. If you guys go study trauma-based mind control or SRA, it's all what they do. Apparently he had done research, right, yeah, at the Charlie Igloo Alpha agencies. Into the subject, since he was a pulp fiction writer, allegedly, you shouldn't put too much stock into being scientific or anything like that. But he did come up with a replacement he thought parents should give their children. There's always a cover story, you guys, always. His magic formula, is made up of barley water, homogenized milk, and lots of honey. The honey's bad for the baby. Well, the baby doesn't have teeth yet, but that's not good for the baby. Barley water, I don't really know what's in that, but that can't be good for a baby. And homogenized milk is not good for babies either. Freaking moron. It sounds innocent enough at first, if not that healthy, until you think of how much sugar is in honey. There you go. This might be why Scientology kids, like Sun Cruz and Leah Remini's daughter, were still drinking from bottles when they were toddlers. Why would they want to give up that sweet sugar hit for boring, healthy food? Hubbard thought they needed this because the formula that doctors and hospitals, aka the people who know what they are talking about, were not just bad, they were criminal. If this wasn't untraditional enough already, it's an inversion, you guys. Everything's inversed. Hubbard claimed that he had come up with the formula when he traveled back in time. Oh boy, to ancient Rome. Because, you know, the Roman women didn't breastfeed their children, please. Still, since he also told his followers that he had been to heaven many times in his life. Right. That's why he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. and allegedly a big womanizer. That's the word on the curb. This isn't even up there with the top 10 most bizarre things he said. Bizarre. If a child is injured, the adult in a small body, Scientologists have a no hands-on approach. Beginning with silent births, normal childhood in Scientology is different than in the rest of the world. If your kid hurt itself, you would probably fall all over the place making sure they are okay. But since in Scientology, anything bad that happens to you is self-induced, when a child gets hurt, they approach it differently. Different is not even the right word to say. It's insanity, in my opinion. A Scientology parenting website has one parent explain how they deal with injuries and upsets. This is also breaking the bond with the child, by the way. And it works. You guys notice how so many of the children and parents have zero bond? That's why. A Scientology parenting website has one parent explain how they deal with injuries and upsets. Upsets are anything that causes a child distress, which is normal for a little baby or toddler to cry. It's so sick. I'm going to try to read that, How to Create an Illuminati Mind-Controlled Slave, again. Let's see if something happens to my phone again. Has one parent explain how they deal with injuries and upsets. Upsets are anything that causes a child distress. You are not supposed to try and distract them or tell them it will get better. That would be comforting the child. Heaven forbid a parent would comfort their child, right? Instead, you should provide something called an assist. One type of assist has the child point out where an object is and then go over and touch it. Isn't that called a locational? This is repeated with different objects until they are out of upset. All this is doing is redirecting the child. And it makes me very sad because there was a reason that the baby was crying. Or the toddler, or the child. Oh, that's so heartbreaking. So heartbreaking. They say this even works on babies so young they can't walk or talk. They claim the philosophy helps 8-month-old children, basically 8-month-old baby, stop being in distress by carrying them around and having them touch things. Imagine how crazy that looks. That's the saddest thing I ever heard. Children of Scientology have a naming ceremony, kind of like a baptism. Don't they do that in other cultures as well? Since Scientologists believe that every baby is just a reincarnated human, for them, it is important to let children know exactly who they are in this life. Yeah, a slave. Do they name their baby a slave or an indentured servant? Child trafficked? That is why they carry out a baptism-like ceremony that involves telling the baby its name. They do this in a lot of cultures. Hubbard said that the baby is aware of its carnal envelope. I mean, just the stuff the weirdo comes up with. What others would call its body, in that it is operating. But it has to be told the identity of its body. It has to be told not only who it is, but also the important adults who will help it. I can't read it. Help it until it can maneuver its body thoroughly. One member talked about how important she thought the naming ceremony was for her child. At least one Sea Org Scientologist claimed she was forced to have an abortion. Well, there are a lot more than just one person. That's also ritual for anyone who doesn't know that. It's a sacrifice, sadly. Although Scientology's Dianetics states that abortion is a personal decision, several former Sea Org Scientologists, women, otherwise known as women, have come forward about their church forcing them to have abortions. Don't you guys wonder which prestigious executives push those? I do. Even if you're not so worried about reincarnation and having to be in the Sea Org over and over again, it drastically affects your current life. While children are allowed to join, let me say that again. While children are allowed to join, let me say that a third time. While children are allowed to join. Once they are in, the higher-ups don't want them making more children. Brave New World, you guys. Families are seen as something that just gets in the way of your work. Children working. There it is right there. But for 70 years, all of these agencies, so-called, couldn't get the policies or some strange reason couldn't understand how Scientology worked. Please. And nobody could ever find L. Ron Hubbard. Please. So Sea Org members are told not to have kids and sometimes are even pressured to have abortions. Oh, they're often told. And a lot of the Sea Org members just leave if they get pregnant. It's kind of like the military. A woman, if she gets pregnant, she has the option of leaving the military. If they do get pregnant, this is what a child can sign up for life. Go look up harrowing, you guys. I put harrowing in some of my videos just to be sarcastic. Why is everything so harrowing? Go look it up in Gematria. Wakey, wakey. There are codes, you guys. So as usual, the reporters allegedly stopped the freaking article in the middle of nothing. There's quite a few more articles I might want to look up and read. So I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.